Well, welcome again to another analysis behind the news. When it comes to the current election cycle, you haven't seen anything yet. I've lived through a number of these in the past. Probably the worst one was with Barry Goldwater. And it's very reminiscent today of what happened during the Goldwater years relative to bashing certain candidates. You know, it's boiled down basically to two now. I know three are still in the race on the Republican ticket and two are on the Democratic ticket. But all of the things that you see happening were also happening during the Goldwater years. The media, the establishment on both sides of the aisle, the Republicans and the Democrats, they all work together. And at the top, this happens, but those of us at the bottom don't see high enough to notice it. We're all out here busy being enemies of one another, while those at the top run things. And what has happened is that this time we begin to see a little bit more of how the street violence and the demonstrations at the various rallies and that sort of thing are interconnected to these individuals at the top. For the first time, we've been able to demonstrate that these people at the bottom in the streets are nothing more than minions of those individuals at the top of the establishment. And we've put out a number of things in our magazine, The New American, to illustrate that. The thing that you're going to notice after the election is over will be various individuals who infiltrated the campaigns to scuttle them from the inside. You'll also notice once the campaign is over that you will find false friends, people that pretended to be your friend during the campaign, but in reality never were. That will happen a lot, and if you stay in the fight, to stay where you will notice these things, it will help you a lot towards future campaigns that you will be involved in. You'll be a little more wise, a little more careful as to how you do things. Now, you'll notice that the media used the debates, regardless of what channel was sponsoring the debates. They used the debates to slowly knock off various candidates. The problem was they didn't knock off the right ones because the voter had it up to their ears, so to speak, with the sort of establishment candidates that they'd been giving us in the past. So they supported the individuals who were the most conservative generally. The one exception was Kasich, and we'll get back to him in a moment. But the thing is that they knocked off everybody until now you've got on the Republican side Trump and Cruz. Now the thing is that they will use Cruz if they can to knock off Trump. And if Cruz is a legitimate individual, they will in turn knock him off because he will not have enough delegates at the convention. Who they have in mind, who knows? It could be Ryan, it could be anybody. I'm sure it will not be anyone that was knocked off in the primary process. That would cause too much of a furor. And this is a lot of assumption involved here if they stop Trump. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to, but they fear him. Why do they fear him? You know, it's kind of boiled down to this. I don't know what Trump's going to do, but I'm beginning to think that the insiders, the establishment, they don't know what he's going to do either. But there is one issue that the man has never deviated on in 20 years, and that's these trade deals. He's the one that's been driving the debate against the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He's the one been driving the debate on immigration and that kind of thing. And these two elements in the agenda of the insiders are very, very important. There are people who want to rule us. Now, we refer to them as the insiders. Other people refer to them in other ways, the establishment, the conspiracy, whatever you wish to put on them as a name. But part of this whole idea of ruling us as a people involves a number of things. It's like an invasion of a country. If you're going to be an invader, let's go back to D-Day in Normandy during World War II. At one point, a lot of people don't know that Omar Bradley, who was in charge of that landing, was seriously considering pulling off all of our troops from that landing because certain objectives were not being made when they needed to be made. And it was becoming disconcerting. Had the Germans not made even worse mistakes, that day would have been a disaster for the armed forces of the United States, England, and Canada. But as it was, they were able to overcome and have a successful invasion. Now, every invasion has certain units. Each one of them is built of a different size, a different kind of training, different objective, different armament, and all sorts of things. And each one of them has a goal to be met. And each one of them has a goal to be met at a certain time in relationship to other goals and other units. And if any of these start to break down, then the whole invasion is in danger of failing. And you either lose or you withdraw or whatever. It's the same way with the agenda of the insiders. Certain things have to be done on a time frame to be able to get it all done at the same time. Certain objectives have to be met. And a few of those objectives are more important than others. And right now, a couple of the very important ones are the Trans-Pacific Partnership and immigration, and they are tied together, and the North American Union. You see, the reason why the powers that be have not solved the immigration problem is they do not want borders between the United States and Mexico and the United States and Canada. For all of you who understand the term, the North American Union, you know that to be true. And so they don't want to solve the immigration problem. It's intrinsic to their whole plan of destroying the culture and society of the United States that holds us together, that holds the Constitution together and everything else. If we allow a lot of people to come in, millions and millions and millions of people to come into our country, automatically that will destroy the Constitution over a period of time because these people don't understand the Constitution. And when they are eligible to vote, if they become legal, who trained them? The government. You go to government classes to learn how to be a citizen of the United States. And I've studied these things, and they leave some very important aspects of our government out of those training classes. For instance, they never teach them that we're a republic, a rule of law. They teach them that we're a democracy and majority rules. Well, majority is not always correct. You know, there's certain things we shouldn't even vote on, for instance, because they will violate the rights of other people. And so these things are not taught in these government classes to qualify for citizenship. So the thing is that the one guy that seems to be the most consistent in this regard is Trump. Now, against the TPP and immigration. Cruz, don't know. That's sort of a Johnny-come-lately thing with him. His history until a few months ago was for the TPP and fast track and that sort of thing. So we just don't know whether he's, really changed his mind or not. But I can guarantee you this: if they use Cruz to knock off Trump, and he really believes that stuff now, Cruz won't last very long either. So we just don't know, and it's going to be something we have to look at. But let me end up by talking just very briefly on Kasich. Kasich was very much involved going around the Rocky Mountain states in a private jet to convince legislators to convene a constitutional convention for a balanced budget. That the only way we could get a balanced budget is to have an amendment to the Constitution. Well, that's not true. All we have to do is adhere to the Constitution, and the budget would be balanced. Nonetheless, it's very interesting to me that during all the debates, Kasich, during the time when they were talking about balancing the budget, he never ever brought up the fact that he was going around in this private jet talking to these legislators, trying to get them to hold a constitutional convention for that reason. Now, if you thought that if you think that he thinks that's a good idea, wouldn't you think he'd bring that up? well, look at me. I've been out there doing this, trying to do this. But I think the reason he didn't bring it up, simply because they don't want to know who's putting the money up behind all of this, who's furnishing the dough for him to be flying around in a private jet and that sort of thing. It's a good question to ask. And if I were you, I'd ask your legislator who wants a balanced budget through a constitutional amendment via a constitutional convention. Very dangerous thing. They don't want people to notice that it's going on. They're keeping it pretty much to themselves. At any rate, there's a lot of questions in regard to the campaign. A lot of questions you need to ask of your candidate before you vote for him. Until next week, we'll see you then.